Hello and welcome to our Holy Week devotions. Today we have reached Maundy Thursday. I'm reading in the Methodist worship book, in the introduction to the service for today, we're told that Maundy is derived from the first words of a traditional Latin anthem, which I'm not going to tell you what it is because I can't pronounce Latin, but it is translated as "a new commandment I give to you." This comes, of course, from John's Gospel, chapter 13, verse 34, and continues, "Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." We remember today how Jesus met with his disciples and together they shared a meal. So much happened at that meal, including Jesus' washing of the disciples' feet, one of the ways in which he demonstrated to his disciples how they were to love one another. Just picture for a moment Jesus kneeling to wash his disciples' feet. It's a very powerful image of love in action. I was in hospital once and I was unable to get out of bed because I was attached to a machine. My feet were cold and one of the nurses fished out my socks from my bag and put them on my feet. A simple gesture which left me feeling both loved and cared for, an act of love. And so many acts of love are being carried out at this time, directed towards those in hospital being cared for by NHS staff, towards those stuck in their homes who are having food and prescriptions delivered to them, towards those who are lonely or simply stuck at home, receiving phone calls from those who are thinking about them. I wonder what act of love we each can carry out today. Our reading for today comes from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26 and verses 17 to 30. And I'm reading from the Contemporary English version. On the first day of the festival of thin bread, Jesus' disciples came to him and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare the Passover meal?" Jesus told them to go to a certain man in the city and tell him, "Our teacher says, 'My time has come. I want to eat the Passover meal with my disciples in your home.'" They did as Jesus had told them and prepared the meal. When Jesus was eating with his 12 disciples that evening, he said, "One of you will hand me over to my enemies." The disciples were very sad, and each one said to Jesus, "Lord, you can't mean me." He answered, "One of you men who has eaten with me from this dish will betray me. The Son of Man will die, as the scriptures say, but it's going to be terrible for the one who betrays me. That man would be better off if he'd never been born." Judas said, "Teacher, surely you don't mean me." "That's what you say," Jesus replied. But later, Judas did betray him. During the meal, Jesus took some bread in his hands. He blessed the bread and broke it. Then he gave it to his disciples and said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body." Jesus picked up a cup of wine and gave thanks to God. He then gave it to his disciples and said, "Take this and drink it. This is my blood." And with it, God makes his agreement with you. It will be poured out so that many people will have their sins forgiven. From now on, I'm not going to drink any wine until I drink new wine with you in my Father's kingdom. Then they sang a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. Going back to the Methodist worship book, it says that the celebration of Holy Communion on this day should be marked by joyful thanksgiving for Christ's gift of this sacrament to his church. And perhaps it's appropriate that at 8 o'clock this evening, a time when we're often just finishing or still in the middle of our Maundy Thursday communion services, many of us will be opening our windows or standing at our doors to join in the nation's celebration of and thanksgiving for the NHS and all that the NHS workers are doing for our country at this time, many in a very sacrificial way. For some of us, it is a deep sorrow that we are unable to share in the sacrament of Holy Communion during this time of social distancing and self-isolating. It's one of the many sacrifices that we all are making in order to keep each other safe, a different way of showing love. I always find it very significant that at the end of Maundy Thursday services, the congregation are asked to leave in silence. This follows on from the words, "When the disciples had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives." Jesus prayed to his Father, "If it is possible, take this cup of suffering from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Christ was obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. For that, we will forever be giving thanks. Amen. Goodbye and God bless.